In this Bubble tutorial video, I'm going to be showing you how to create the best ChatGPT-like experience for your users in your Bubble app. And there's no better way to show you why I think this is the best than by just showing you a demo, which is I click send. Now, if you try to build a ChatGPT clone in Bubble, you'll notice that this ticks a lot of boxes. It streams in text. That was only made available by Bubble within the last month. It also anchors the conversation to the bottom of the repeating group. So I'm going to be showing you all of those things in this video, and it's going to be made so much quicker because I'm going to be using Nocodable components, and that is going to save me hours of building a UI like this. So without further ado, I'm going to be loading up a blank Bubble app and we'll be recreating everything you've just seen. Head over to Nocodable Bubble Components. There's a link down in the description. Sign up, install their Chrome extension, because that then gives you a floating icon down here. So first of all, I'm on a page and I'm going to change this to a column. It might need to be row, but just make sure that it isn't fixed. I'm then going to go ahead and search in their components for chat. And I'm going to copy component. Some of the components copied with workflows. Some of the building there is already done for you. Others don't. But make sure if it says with workflows, you right click and you go paste special with workflows. Cool. Right, I must have got it right. So it is columns. If I go to rows, it's not quite right. Yeah, it needs to be columns. See just how quick that was. So we're now immediately going to dive into the OpenAI responses endpoint and set up an API call through the Bubble API connector. So first of all, I need to go into plugins and I need to add a plugin, and it's going to be the most popular one. This will literally allow you to connect with thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of web services out there. You can do web scraping, you can fetch news articles. We've got loads of tutorials on that. If you want to explore those, there's a link down in the description. I'm just going to install the API connector now. And I'm going to add in an API, and I'm going to call it OpenAI. Now, over in the OpenAI documentation, this is what we need to take and sort of translate into the right places in the Bubble API connector. And I'm going to take you through each step. So we have an endpoint here. This is our responses, and it is source up here. It is a post API call. So let's go back in here, change it to post. We'll say send message. I'm going to choose action. That's because I want a user to click a button, the send button, and we're going to send a message. So I'm going to paste that in. Now, we have to authenticate. This just means that OpenAI knows who to bill for the tokens that we use in sending and receiving messages. So if I go into the documentation, we can see that part of our API call has these headers. Now, we don't need to add in line 2 because content type application JSON is now a default header in Bubble API calls, but we do need to say authorization, bearer, and then the API key. So let's go back into our app. I'm going to go private key in header, authorization. Bubble automatically fills that in because it's the most popular key name. Although if you're using Claude, it's like X API key, something like that is my API key. And I will, of course, be deleting this before publishing the video. Now, we're just going to go step by step with making our API call. So we're going to try sending one message first. So I'm going to copy the data section and paste it in. And then just so I save some money, I'm going to change it to GPT-4o mini. And then I'm going to initialize the call. And this is our way of training Bubble, first of all, to check whether we've made any mistakes in what we set up here, but also to train Bubble in what sort of response to expect. So I'm going to say initialize call. I've not got an immediate error, so that's all worked for me. And then if we go to raw, we can see what we get back. And here is our response. Now, in the demo I showed you at the start, we are going to be using streaming. So if you don't want to stream, this is where you get your data from, but we do want to stream. So we change this to stream. And then if I go into the API documentation, we can see how do we add streaming? Well, we say stream is a Boolean value, so stream equals true. And I can add that in here. Making sure I add a comma to the end so I don't break the JSON syntax. I'm now going to initialize the call. So key bits here is we change this to stream. and we've got stream as a part of our API calls body. So let's initialize the call. Now this will take a little bit of time, especially if you have a much longer prompt, because Bubble will wait for the full amount to come back, even though we're going to be using it in a streaming context. I then go ahead and I go to Delta, and this is common across other AI APIs. And here is our text as it comes in. And so I want to say push to text stream. And I have this down here, save response. And so that is going to, in a moment when I show you how to set up this in the page builder, that's going to enable us to find where the streaming text is coming in. We're going to make a few more changes here though as we go, which is that our input, we want to be able to send more than one message, because part of what also makes ChatGPT so magical is an awareness of what previous messages were, and so our users can refer, it's kind of contextually aware of the history. And to do that, we'll go back into the documentation, and we're going to be saving each of the messages to our Bubble database. So if I click through on conversation state, we can see that it wants our input. We can structure it as a list of messages just like this. So I'm going to take this one here. Notice that it actually starts with square brackets. So I'm going to take it here, paste it in, add in these square brackets, remove the comment. Now I'm going to check that this works again. I'm just going to reinitialize. And we can see the, if we go under Delta, we can see we actually get the response, who's there? It's getting our joke, knock, knock. So I'm going to click save again. Now, when we send through our conversation history, we need to be replacing everything in here with a list that looks like this. So it needs to be a series of objects with role, user or assistant, and then the content. So actually in our API call, we need to change this and make this whole bit dynamic. So I'm going to cut this to my clipboard because I'm going to use it again in a moment, and then insert messages in here, because this then means it's a dynamic, like a merge field or a variable that we can insert data into in a workflow. If I was to reinitialize the call now, it is not going to work because this is empty. In fact, I'm not going to demo it because then I'd have to reinitialize it. So we can paste it back in here if we want to reinitialize. You only need to reinitialize if you make a major change or you want to check that something is still working. Let's next set up our workflow. So I'm going to go back into the design tab and we're going to start work on the send button. Also down here, I'm just going to rename this to message, input message. Okay. So let's add in a workflow. So when a user clicks this button, the first thing we want to do is to create a new thing. And we, like I say, this is basically an empty bubble app. We're going to create a new thing, and this is going to be of type message. And it's going to have some fields to it. It's going to have content, which is going to be text. And we get that from our input message, it's value. And if we go back to the documentation, we also need to have role, because when we supply the history of the conversation, OpenAI needs to know who's the user, who is the assistant, what side of the conversation is it dealing with. So the best way I found to do that is to use option sets. Let's skip tutorial and I'll create a role option set. And then it has two values. It has assistant and it has user. And then if I go into the data tab onto messages, I can add in my role option set here. So now in my workflow, role, so the role of the sender is the user. And then I also want to make sure that it has got some conversations, so that if we look at the, we've got a conversation bar down the side here. So let's go ahead and create a new type, a data type called conversation. Now, privacy rules are vital. I'm not going to cover it in this video. We've got other videos covering privacy rules. But conversation is just going to be a list of messages. And I'm doing it this way because when I was preparing the demo that we started the video with, I found that do a search for of messages. If you're building anything with Bubble, ChatGPT Clone before, you know what I mean. Otherwise, you can kind of skip over this. I found the best way is that you retrieve a list of messages from the conversation. So if we go back into our workflow, we now need to have a conversation that we can attach this message to. So what I'm going to do is make some changes to the UI here. First of all, I want this bit here to be a list of conversations, and it's going to be do a search for conversation. And then because this is set up for dummy content, we're going to just reconnect bits here. So this is not text anymore. This is a conversation. And then this is also a conversation. And then this is kind of built to be like a user-to-user chat interface. It works perfectly for what we're doing with AI. But we're going to make a quick change here, which is at the moment, this is showing a pop-up, and we're simply going to have it create a new conversation. And then we need to know what conversation we're working with on the page. So I'm going to take this part here and change it to current conversation, and then it's going to be of type conversation. And when the page loads, I want it to load in a conversation. So I'm going to say do a search for conversation and just pick the most recent conversation. So whatever was modified last, first item. Then this is turning into a really comprehensive tutorial, because what if the page loads and the user doesn't have a conversation? Well, we can fix that, because we'll go in and say on page load, when count of conversations is 0, we create a new conversation. Okay. Right, I think we're getting close to where we could test this. Oh no, we're going to add in some more to the workflow. So here's our message. We now need to make changes to a thing. And we find the conversation we're working with under current conversations conversation. It's named that just because that's what I named this. And we say messages, and we add this message. Then in our repeating group here, remember this is just set up so it's got some nice dummy data, but this is really a list of messages. And the data is current groups conversation messages. And then if we dive into what's actually in the repeating group, where is it? Here. That we find that Nocodable Components has added in these two UI elements. So it's actually a repeating group. I think I've added that in the wrong place. This is a repeating group. Hang on. Yeah, okay, yeah, no, sorry. It is, yeah, messages. So then this is message, current sales message, and this is message, current sales message. And what we can do is add a conditional statement here. Now I'm going to change what Nocodable Components have done here because I'm going to be using role instead. So we'll say instead, when current sales message role is user, make this visible. And then I'm going to copy and paste this, paste it in here, remove that. And it's when it's assistant. So that way we get the left and the right side of the conversation working just fine. And then I think I just need to reconnect some of these up. So it's no longer, so see, I've got these issues. So it is message. And in here, it would be message. And then the text is content. Content. Right, let's go back to our workflow, because I also want to create a placeholder for the inbound message, the response from the assistant. So I'll go ahead, create a new thing, message, and the content is empty because we're only going to save the content when we have the full message back. We're basically going to be looking for two fields in the AI response. We're looking for the streamed text so far, and we'll be looking for the completed text. So all we need now is the role, and to say that it is the assistant, and to add it into the conversation messages, add the result of step 3. So it's basically mirroring this. Now, the reason that I'm referring to step 2 here is I need my messages to be added in the right order, and that the assistant message comes after the user message. And Bubble workflows are not necessarily linear. In order to enforce an order, you can refer to an earlier step, in which case it will have to run after the earlier step. So now we can make our OpenAI call, send message. And remember, we have to send a list formatted in the appropriate JSON that looks like this. And so the way we can do this is to say, well, where's our conversation? It is current conversations conversation. It's its list of messages, and then we're formatting each message in that particular JSON way. So I've just pasted that back into my clipboard. So this is a template for each message that's sent, and we just insert in the bits we want to swap in and out. So it's current messages role display. That's then referring directly to our option set value here. It's going to be assistant or it's going to be user. These are the display values. And then we have our message content. And so notice that I'm deleting everything, including the speech marks, because we need to JSON safe this. A very common issue that people experience when building a ChatGPT clone in Bubble is that if a user inserts special characters like punctuation, how does the AI API, in this case OpenAI, how does it know what is text and what is part of the code? Well, in terms of traditional coding, that's known as escaping. Bubble does that all for you, and it wraps everything in speech marks by using JSON safe. So we'll say this message is content JSON safe. And I cannot overstate how many errors people encounter, and it can just be fixed by understanding how JSON safe works. Then if we go back to the documentation, we can see that each one is separated by a comma. So the delimiter is a comma. Right, now we want to display the results that are being streamed back. We can't stream directly to the Bubble database. I suspect that is for optimization, so that there's just not constantly writing data to the database. We basically have to stream the content to a group on the page and refer to that group. So if I click through on here, actually, I'm just going to refresh my editor because I'm not seeing the text that I've selected in the element tree. I also have noticed, just as like an FYI, that if you think that you should be able to find a particular piece of data in a workflow and you can't, and you're so sure that you've got the data type set up correctly and you still can't see it, it's just worth refreshing the editor. So here we go. Right, I need somewhere to store the inbound text so far field of the stream's data. And so I'm probably just going to do it here. We change this here to a text stream. This is a type of content that we created when we initialized the call with streaming in the API connector. And data source is empty because we fill the data source at this point here. So we can say display data. Remember, we can't write streaming data directly, kind of character by character, into the database. I need to name that something much more easy for me to understand. I just say stream data here so that it's really clear. And then we're displaying the results of step 5, text stream. Okay, it's because we're sending through a text stream. These are the fields of a text stream, but we're just sending through the text stream. Now, here is my workaround for how you add this into a repeating group, which is, here's the assistant message, or the message sent to the user. And we're just going to add in a conditional, and we're going to say when, let's add in a field, message streaming. In fact, we'll say is streaming. And now we can say when parent group's message is streaming is yes, we change the text. So by default, we will be showing text from the message that's saved in the database. But when it is in state streaming, we want to show the text that is streaming into our streaming container down here. So I'll say streaming text so far. And then we'll update our workflow to reflect that, which is to say that the message here, our assistant message, is streaming is yes. Okay, and then finally, we will save and change streaming to no when we have the full response back. So we'll say make changes to a thing. And it's our assistant message, which is our step 3. And we'll change is streaming to no. And we'll save the response. So content equals. And here's just the way that Bubble have created the streaming protocol, which is we say the result of step 5's text stream full text. And it won't run this action in the workflow until full text is available. And that's really handy and helpful for us. Now, I'm wondering if we're at a point where we can test this. Let's just see what the issue is. Oh, this is just referring to the dummy content. So I found I'm going to clear this, clear that. And I'm just going to put my name in here. Okay, but you could make this dynamic. You could run a second API call to name a conversation. I'll just show you what we can do in here, which is to basically show the contents of the most recent message sent by the assistant. So we'll say groups, conversation, messages, filter. Do you want to use filter? Yeah, filter by where role equals assistant and where content is not empty, because remember, content will be empty while it's streaming in. So we want to show the last complete message. And then sort this by most recent. Notice that we can add in a sort into a filter, so we don't have to add an additional step, content. Okay, let's run it and test it. Okay, now there's a lot, if you're still following along, there's a lot of components here, there's a lot going on. If there are any bugs, I'll debug them with you. So we'll just say write a sonnet about no code. And I'm asking it to write a sonnet because I just want it to write more than a few lines. So it's in there. And look, there we go. We get our text streaming in. And then I'm going to ask it for something else. I'll just say write another sonnet, and this is going to highlight a key problem with using repeating groups, which I'm then going to show you how we can overcome. Write another sonnet, which is, it goes down the page, it's not scrolling. And then, if I was to arrive on this page fresh, if I refresh it, then we get our most recent conversation. Just remember that we get that because I've set it here. But we're at the oldest part of the messages, not the newest. So to do this, we have to use a plugin that reverses the repeating group. What would be perfect is if Bubble added in a feature that would do this, particularly because of how popular chat-based interfaces have now been for over 2 years. But Bubble don't have this, and so we're going to have to do it ourselves, which is go into plugins. I'm just going to search for reverse. And I believe what this is doing is it is kind of flipping the repeating group in CSS. So it isn't particularly elegant, but it does get the result. Now, there are a number of different plugins. I've tried several in the past. Plugins get removed, plugins get updated. The one that I used only a few hours ago was this one here by Mintflow. So I'm going to install it. And then because it loads in a bit of script, I think it is literally just some CSS. We have to add the element to the page. I'm going to add it in down here. And then we need to target the repeating group ID. In Bubble, we do that by adding an ID attribute to the repeating group. If you don't see ID attribute, you can enable it in settings, general, scroll all the way down, and there's a box that you can tick. And this effectively adds a label within the code or an ID within the HTML that we can target. So we can name this basically anything we want. I'm just going to say RG1 for repeating group 1. And then if I go back to here, I then just write in RG1. And we'll see immediately the effect that this has, which is we're on page load, we're at the bottom of the conversation, but now our messages are in the wrong order. Like I say, I think it's because it's just literally flipping the orientation of the repeating group. So we then have to reverse the order of our messages. So we'll say sorted by modified date. So we sort by the opposite of what we want within the bubble editor, because the reverse repeating group plugin is flipping it round. That's looking better. So now let's just say write a third sonnet. And look at that. We are streaming text in and we are scrolling as we go. Streaming text, of course, that was not possible until recently, but scrolling as we go, that's really the magic. And trust me, if you're watching this, if you're thinking building a ChatGPT clone for the first time, this is something which has been a real pain in Bubble for so long. And so I'm just really pleased to share with you a solution. There's one thing that would make this perfect, and it's a real treat if you've stuck along for this one, because this has turned out to be a rather long but hopefully comprehensive video, which is what if I want to send the message when the enter key is hit. So if I say write another sonnet and hit enter, it's a multi-line input, which is probably what you want for a chat interface. If you were using a single line input, then the enter key could be automatically linked to your workflow. But because it's multi-line, we have to use a plugin for that. So we're going to go ahead, plugins, and I'm just going to search for enter. And again, similar to reversing repeating groups, new ones become available, old ones don't work. You do have to kind of just test things out. I'm trying to think of which one I've used most recently. We will say, we'll try this one. Yeah. Okay, so I have to add the element to the page because once more it's loading in a bit of script to basically hijack the enter key. So I'm just going to add it in there. Okay, yes, this is going to be good. So I have to tell it both the ID of the input and the ID of the send button. The reason that I have to tell it the ID of the input, if you've used Bubble for any length of time, you'll know that Bubble doesn't immediately, like instantly, detect the values within an input. It often only detects it when you click out of the input. That would mean that if you were to immediately send the message and it hasn't detected the input, you're going to send an empty message. You're going to get a syntax error with your JSON. That has just made me think of something in my workflow. So I'm sending all the messages formatted as text. It's working. I think that I might just need, if this might solve a bug for some people. So I'm going to just back that and then say filter. Okay, because I'm surprised that what I set up worked, because really I needed to say content is not empty, because what we don't want to be doing is sending OpenAI an empty message. It's likely to get an error. And so I think it would much better, it would need to look like this. So I've just added in that filter there. Yeah, content is not empty. Okay, let's go back to where I was before I was getting sidetracked, which is, yes, let's add in the ID. So we add in the ID, we'll just call this one input message. That, and we'll just call this send. And I thought I might need to add on a workflow, but I don't think I actually do. I think that it's now going to, basically it's going to click the button for me when enter is pressed. So I don't actually need to trigger the workflow in a different way. Let's test it, see if it works. So I'll say write another sonnet. Enter. Oh, look at that. And it clears. I'm not even having to reset the input. It's just worked for me. So what I might want to do, just because why not? Let me just show you how we can make this better and better as we go, which is on the workflow for here. We will then reset. No, we're not. We'll say focus on input message, and we'll put that. Oh, we'll just put it at the end. So this will mean that I can type in something. So I can say what day of the week is it. Now, I don't think it's going to get this right. I can hit enter. It's not Sunday, but it automatically focuses. So I can, oh no, I've not even touched my mouse. So I can now say, are you sure? Justify your reasoning in 400 words. Just see what that says. I mainly just wanted to show you how cool it was with the content streaming in. Last thing I'll show you is the reason that this is not perfect height is because the debugger adds this space to the bottom of the page. So if I disable the debugger, now, oh yeah, now it looks perfect. And just to show you that this is fully working, I'll say something like, pick your favorite line from the second sonnet. I'm just demonstrating that it's aware of the historical context of the conversation. Right, I'm going to end things there. As a quick reminder, even though this video is longer than I expected, I wanted it to be comprehensive, and it probably would have been 5 times longer. That's no exaggeration if I hadn't used Nocodable components. And you can sign up and you can start. In fact, let me go back and just show you other parts. So we've got alerts, we've got cards, we've got hero sections, we've got headers, you've got different pages, you've got Kanban boards even. Another real pain to set up, and they're Kanban boards with workflows. And then just has tons of pre-built components. So I'd really recommend heading over, clicking the link in our description, heading over to Nocodable Bubble Components, because it will save you hours. And it saved me hours with this demo of building a ChatGPT clone with bubble.io.